Welcome to this edition of Business Supes, where we talk to successful business owners, learn a little bit about them, their business, and of course, their business superpower. Today, I am joined by Curt Clark, who is with Club Pilates. Curt, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. So, why don't we just go ahead and jump right into it? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about your business? What's the origin story?
Okay. So I've spent 30 years with PepsiCo, specifically Pepsi, doing a variety of jobs I started off as a company rep to the bottling community. Then we acquired bottlers, so I became an operating guy and then did a couple of headquarters stints and on the brand side, and then it's some strategic roles. Did one stint opening up a bottler in Poland, which was interesting to say the least.
Wow, I bet.
Yeah. We started in a Soviet tank manufacturing facility, which is it was abandoned and still guarded.
Wow.
So fun story, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. And then after 30 years, it's time to retire. Tried gardening for a couple of weeks. Said this is not for me, and started looking for business opportunities. Thought I was going to do some consulting. Had some leads. They didn't really play out. One was very lucrative, seven-figure kind of thing. 18
Mm.
months in Saudi Arabia. My wife would have to wear a hijab and or a burqa and live on a compound, and just wasn't worth the money. Then started looking at buying a business. You find out quickly why they're for sale sometimes. That was a little discouraging. And then my last resort was to look at franchising. For some reason, I had great disdain for franchising, but went down the path of vetting 19 different concepts all the way down to the FDD. And if you know that process, you don't get the FDD on the first call. It's like
Right.
way down the line before you get to that. So looked at a variety of concepts. My primary target was in the wellness space because I figured that's going to be there for a while as we have an aging population. Um, but looked inside and outside of that at lots of different concepts and then settled on Club Pilates. It was just from the very first meeting, which was on my cell phone, driving through a mountain in Mexico, which is not the optimal time to have a
Right.
conversation. Was completely captivated by how smart these people were about bringing Pilates to the masses, and I was on board.
That's really cool. So what was it specifically about the wellness space that spoke to you? Because, obviously it's going to be around for a while, but there are a lot of other things that could be around for a while too. They talk about the recession-proof businesses out there like alcohol and things along those lines. So what was it about health and wellness that really kind of spoke to you?
I couldn't put my finger on it. I just knew that something that was better for you, that we had some passion around. Not that I don't have a passion around alcohol, but this was intriguing to me, and I just thought
Hmm.
that this was a developing industry and really morphing, and there was some opportunity there. If you look just casually, you'll see that the business is moving from big box to boutique, and
Hmm.
across lots of different formats. And so it just seemed like there was a state of flux that was ready for some change.
Okay, so great. So you transitioned from corporate America into being a business owner, which is really something of a shift, I think, with mindset. At least that's something that I personally experienced, and a lot of business owners I know who've done that have experienced that as well. So, what were some of the struggles that you experienced going from that corporate world to owning your own business?
For me, it was probably easier than most. Um,
Hmm.
Having responsibility for a P&L on an operating business gave me a lot of experience. I was a organizational communication major. Understanding a P&L was live fire exercise,
Hmm.
month to month, and so you learn quick. Pepsi also gave me an opportunity. They gave me a long leash to do some things that were pretty creative and pretty out there. Two projects I was told were impossible to do, and we're doing them today, and we're making a lot of money. I liked the entrepreneurial aspect of it. That was an easy transition. There's a learning curve in the fact that you realize there's so many complexities, especially around permitting and legal and setup and just the things that you just don't do day to day with an established
Hmm.
business that you have to get smart on quick. especially when you're doing it for the first time around. I can, point to several things in our first studio I'll never do again, because
Right.
you have the benefit of understanding, and we're a franchise. So, you get kind
Mhm.
of a running start at this, but still you find that, the unexpected, and you're unprepared. And so you got to cope with that. You got to move fast. You got to learn what you're missing. And so that was probably harder than the corporate life, where a lot of that is prepared for you.
And I think for me, it was kind of being out there on an island somewhat by my own, and we're a franchise as well. When you're talking about the FDD, and going through as many of those as you did, for for people who don't know about those are not 3-page documents. I mean, those are a volume to say the least. But it was not having, all those resources that I remembered having in corporate America. And now all of a sudden it was so interesting that it just kind of fell on me. So how did you kind of work through that? Not having maybe those support personnel, or did you have support personnel you were working with?
I think, when we started with Club Pilates, there was less than 200. And they were only a couple of years into, they acquired a small boutique business in California, 40 something. It was not thriving. Um,
Hmm.
but they understood pretty quickly that Club Pilates, or Pilates, works. The issues were outside of what Pilates does, and they address those issues. And so for me, it was, the benefit of understanding where they were coming from, and how they were approaching that.
So were you a Pilates person before you bought the franchise, or?
Nope, that was one of my first hesitations. It's like, I don't even know what Pilates is. I find out a
Mhm.
lot of people don't know what Pilates is. They call it Pilates, but sometimes it's yoga, sometimes it's some sort of fusion crazy thing, sometimes it's just flopping around on a mat. They all call it Pilates. We do Pilates. Our instructors have 500 hours minimum of training, which is like junior college, and they're hard to
Mm,
find. So we've had to grow a
I
lot
bet.
of our own, which is difficult, right? When you start a business and you got to wait a year and a half for your instructors, that's difficult.
So does Club Pilates give you that training program to grow them, or did you have to figure that out on your own?
Uh, we recruited heavily to get started, but you have to, because a lot of these folks don't have all the certifications that Club Pilates
Hmm.
requires. Some started off as junior instructors, and so staffing was a challenge. But we do have a teacher training program that we do in house. We actually have a master trainer. She's probably the most experienced master trainer in 5 states,
Oh,
and
wow.
we got lucky, and she was one of our first hires, and she's trained probably the majority of our instructors now have all been grown in house.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So what is the difference between Pilates and yoga and flopping around on a mat?
Well, Joseph Pilates started a discipline, right? And people try to improve on that. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I respected about Club Pilates is we didn't try to change what he started, because what he started worked. It's worked for 100 years. I mean, it's not like the fashion business, and certainly the fitness industry become a fashion business, right?
Right.
Whatever's hot, and then it's cold, and then it's gone, right? It's been around for 100 years because it works, right? The issues were beyond that. It was because it was expensive. There wasn't variety. There wasn't availability. A lot of folks who were taking Pilates were spending $100 or $200 a session, or they had a reformer in their house and someone came in their house, right?
Hmm.
Club Pilates turned that model around, right, and said, let's figure out a way to do pure, just Pilates, but do it with 12 folks doing the same exercise at the same time, so that one instructor can make sure that it's done safely and properly. And we're very scripted. There's a
Hmm.
beginning, a middle, and an end. And we have 8 formats, so you can get plenty of variety. And we have 3 levels, so you can get the intensity you want, but everyone's doing the same thing at the same time. So you don't need to have this one-on-one, or what used to be at max 1-on-4. You know, that invention unlocked a whole bunch of value, because it brought in a lot of folks who could not afford to do $100 sessions, right?
Right.
And so, because of that, we broadened the scope of the available consumer, and that was a huge unlock.
No, I love what you're saying too, because first of all, you're talking about the systems, which is a really great thing, and businesses to be successful need those in place. But now you're also talking about leveraging, being able to have more people using that time slot, which obviously for an average dollar sale type of a focus is a really really good thing for you and for a business. So how many locations do you all have?
We have three now. We're looking at possible fourth, but no one's building now. So existing space is hard to find, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of compromises. So, but we have three in the metro area.
So what would you say are some of the successes that you guys have had as business owners?
That's a fairly broad question. You want to tighten that down a little bit, or I mean,
Well, I like broad questions because you never know what the answer is going to be.
fair enough.
Let me maybe rephrase it then. So, what's your? I'll actually change it. What's your favorite part of being a business owner?
It's actually the same thing that I liked when I worked for Pepsi, is that
Hmm.
I had the autonomy to be entrepreneurial. It's great to have the support, but um, I'm the master of my destiny, right? If
Hmm.
I think or if I swim, it's on me. I can't blame corporate. And I enjoyed the high risk, high reward type of environment that I was afforded at Pepsi doing some strategic projects. It's absolutely what I love about this. It's also what I sweat about every night, because you have to realize the status quo changes, right? And you've got to be prepared to anticipate and preempt those changes to remain competitive, to remain, but we've gone from nothing to the 800-pound gorilla, right? I mean, we had 7,000 attendees last month in three
Wow,
states. Yeah.
it's
And,
impressive.
we're doing probably 130, 140 classes a month at all times of
Mm,
day. And so that's afforded us the ability to really penetrate the market beyond what we expected. So, we opened with our first one with 200, and the next one opened with 300, and the next one opened with close to 350, and they've all grown
wow.
geometrically. So, we're sitting in a pretty good place. We've got um, really good ratings, really great stories from our members who've had
Hmm.
transformative experiences. And so we've got a good word of mouth that we're doing it right. And, you have to earn that. You can't just buy that with advertising.
Right,
And if your word of mouth isn't strong enough to support the promise that's made in the advertising, I'm sorry.
right.
You know,
Yeah,
when the burger looks like something different in the drive-through than it does on the commercial, you got a problem.
absolutely. And with the social media and with the Google reviews and all those things, it's really easy for people to voice their displeasure. So
And
that's a really good point.
we carry a 4.9 rating, and we have like over or close to 900 reviews, which is more than
Wow,
every other concept combined. So,
that's impressive.
well, it's rewarding because you have a
Hmm.
lot of folks who say you're doing it right. And that's very satisfying and very rewarding that the effort you're putting into it is being recognized.
Hmm. Yep. So, you've got three locations. How involved are you in the day-to-day running of the operation?
Well, I think you have to be grounded. I really respect Elon, who is sleeping on the floor in his factory, right?
Right.
Because if you don't know how to run it yourself, you're
Hmm.
doomed, right? So if you don't like building a sandwich, don't start a Subway, right?
Right.
You got to know how it's done if you're going to lead. And you can't just lead from the rear. You have to lead from the front. So I was very hands-on to begin with, and I have slowly built the skills and talents of the sales folks and the GMs, that we can step back. So I deliberately put myself in um, back office stuff, the unglamorous
Hmm.
stuff, and let my GMs be the customer heroes and manage the front end. You know, I do, my wife has certain responsibilities, kind of functionalize that based on
Mm.
what we're good at or where we have experience. And so that's good from the standpoint that as I've got the white hair now, I can do it a lot of my timing
Hmm.
and I can do it remotely. But I still stay very connected to the business, but it's not like I'm in there day to day.
Nice. Yeah. And I think, that's really the ultimate goal, I think, for most business owners is get to a point where, yeah, they still keep their finger in the pie, so to speak, but they have a quality team out there who can run the business for them. And when you got the right people and the right culture in place, it just makes such a huge difference for you as a business owner.
I agree. And, you know, I thought it was important to have great people when I worked at Pepsi. And I think I
Mhm.
had 130 people in my organization at one time and really took great pride in having great people. Oh my gosh, having great people in this teeny tiny organization is so much more important. We
Mhm.
went through a lot of people who looked good on paper, interviewed well, and then either just didn't have the social skills or business
Mhm.
acumen or neither. And you know, you're trying on different folks and they're in pivotal roles and they just don't make it. And you know, it's very challenging in this environment now to get good quality people, even if you're paying. I think we're probably in the top quartile. At least
Mhm.
I aim to be in the top quartile because that's the kind of talent I want to hire. But even so, people that have that the experience that they need for those GM jobs is hard to find.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and I love what you're saying too about wanting to be in that higher quartile and recognizing people for their value. And what kind of culture would you say you've built at Club Pilates? And is it the same as the culture that you see, throughout the entire franchise?
Well, you know, the old adage is the fish stinks from the head. So you create your culture kind of out of who you are, and that's replicated. So I don't, and now I've set myself up to flatter myself, which I didn't intend to do, but I think we have a very supportive culture.
Hmm.
I think there's a sense of teamwork, even though people don't really work together. I mean, you have somebody who's teaching, that's the back side of the house. You have somebody at the front desk, front side of the house, their backs are to each other. So even in studio, they're not interacting. Um, you know, and so they don't get together that often, but they are a very supportive network of a great team spirit. They want a great team. And so they all excel at doing their jobs and we try to support them. I mean, we invest in them, not just with financially, but like our instructors, we will compensate them for continuing education because we want them to be razor sharp. Um, it's part of it.
That's fantastic. So, all right. So the question that started this whole thing off, what would you say is your business superpower?
You know, when you said that, that's not the first things that come to mind. It's the not superpowers. And, you know, coming
Hmm.
from a corporate environment that was um very blunt and straight to the point, doesn't work in this environment where our team is primarily female, not exclusively female
Hmm.
right now, and that doesn't play well. So I've learned how to try to rein it in and not be quite so uh, straightforward and to the point. I think
Hmm.
there's two things that have worked well for me. I've had some great experiences again with Pepsi on the strategy side. So I think that way. I'm intrigued by strategy. I'm
Hmm.
intrigued by businesses that have gotten things right and try to apply that to our own thing. And then I love coaching. I love coaching and developing people and have always enjoyed that from my very first job. So I take great satisfaction in that. I am not an instructor. I don't coach like that. But
Hmm.
but coaching people on how to be successful people and business people, I do. And I think I've seen our team grow exponentially in their maturity in handling very difficult situations. And we try to do that through principle.
Hmm.
So it's not a one-off type of situation you're coaching for. It's something that they can use again and again and again.
Well, that's fantastic. I love hearing that, and I think it's so important. Very often people hire somebody and they think that's all they need to do, but wanting to help that person grow and become a better part, a better version of themselves, if that's what they want for themselves, is just such an additional benefit that so many companies and businesses out there don't provide.
Yep. It's astounding to me, just how often uh, owners step back and just say it's going to run on its own, and,
Hmm.
and it will straight into the ground,
Right.
like
Yep.
flying an airplane. I mean, it'll go so far and then it stops.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I talk to a lot of people about they think they're delegating, but they're actually abdicating.
Oh, that's a
Right.
great point. That's exactly right.
What piece of lots of great stuff here? What piece of advice, if you could give a business owner one piece of advice to make them better, what would it be?
Um, I think it's two things that you have to balance. You have to have a passion for the business, but passion alone won't get you there. Okay. So at a minimum, you have to be a believer. And the other side is you have to have business acumen. You have to know how the math works, how the money flows, how many transactions you need to make your boat float, right? You
Hmm.
need to understand your cost structure and all those things to make money. Passion alone won't get you there. Business acumen won't get you there. You have to know the business well enough to engage in the business, to further the business. You can't just push a pencil. You can't just abdicate to others and say, "Well, you go figure it out. I'll do the money end of it." It's got to be both.
That's some fantastic advice, Curt. So thanks so much for taking some time to hang out with us today and sharing your business superpower. We appreciate it.
Talking to you.